Hi, so I continue with pedagogical responses, and I discuss some of the approaches that emerge from what we have already covered in the past two installments of this video. The first approach is the macro level approach, and it includes the overall aims of the curriculum, whereas the second approach is a micro level approach, which includes lessons or some schemes of work. For example, if you want to discuss and only cover procedural knowledge in your curriculum, so everything that you define in your curriculum and teach in the classroom orbits around the topic of procedural knowledge, and that's macro level. Whereas if you want to discuss procedural knowledge, declarative knowledge, and other things in your course or in your lessons, then what you're going to do is to include one or two lessons on, for example, procedural knowledge, then some lessons on declarative knowledge, and other lessons on other topics of your choice. This is what we call a micro-level sort of approach to teaching. Now that I'm talking about procedural knowledge and declarative knowledge, let me give you some information about them here. So the first one, procedural knowledge, has to do with the ability of students to act and perform. Even though it's a kind of knowledge, it's basically, in reality, it's really a type of skill that students are supposed to develop in the class. So I would define it as the ability to use discourse in a meaningful way. On the other hand, declarative knowledge is the ability to recognize and interpret individual items of language. So it has to do with recognition and understanding what's going on, but procedural knowledge has to do with using that knowledge to perform language activities or to do acts. Now, the other thing that I would like to stress here is that at a micro level, the procedural knowledge refers to some holistic activities that are grounded in interpersonal sociolinguistic processes, according to Gates. Notably, joint negotiation of understanding and associated holistic psycholinguistic procedures in the knowledge, which includes the development of fluency, but not only fluency, but also complexity. So what I would like to add here is that procedural knowledge could be taught in the classes at three levels. What you want to activate and also help students to automatize in their interactions and communication activities is, first of all, some kind of linguistic accuracy, but most importantly, fluency and complexity, which I have already covered in the previous installments of this video. In other words, you want to bring up students to a level in which they can speak and interact fluently with other interlocutors and using a kind of complex array of linguistic structures. In addition, and quite importantly, you want to bring them up to a level where they produce sociolinguistically appropriate utterances. This is known as pragmatic competence. Therefore, the main aim of developing procedural knowledge of your language learners would be to prepare them for actual real-life communications rather than to just recognize the accuracy or complexity of utterances or grammatical structures without being able to produce them. This latter is declarative knowledge. Declarative knowledge, or it's sometimes referred to as descriptive knowledge, includes some analytical activities that focus more narrowly on understanding and using systematic aspects of language. So examples of this include helping students to understand, not necessarily produce, but understand discourse patterns, to understand and learn about strategic patterns or lexicogrammatical patterns, or even the pronunciation of some words. Here I have provided a schematic representation of a piece of discourse. I'm going to provide an example, use this as an example to differentiate between declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge further. If you are teaching a group of students who are preparing themselves, for example, to deliver some presentations, oral presentations in some conferences or seminars, the first thing that you want to do is to raise the awareness about the macro structure of presentations, and in this way you will be helping them to build declarative knowledge. You would probably start by teaching what is included in an oral presentation in an academic setting. One of them will be, let's say, section 1, introduction, and then you will let them know what is introduction about, or what kind of structures they can use in order to introduce the topic and grab the attention of their audience. Then comes the main body of the presentation, which includes perhaps a little bit of literature review, methodology, etc., data analysis, and conclusions. And conclusion comes here at number 3. So this is what I have referred to as declarative knowledge, which then progresses to some activities which revolve around procedural knowledge. So you want to build that procedural knowledge, and as a result you engage them in some activities and you allow them to practice, and the focus will be development of fluency rather than the development of accuracy. There's another way of doing these activities. If you think that your students are advanced enough and they don't need really too much scaffolding and teaching, what you could do is to allow them to start by talking about the structure of oral presentations as much as they can and they like. They use their procedural knowledge in this way. And you can go around the class and find out what mistakes or errors students are committing, take notes of them, and after this procedural knowledge activity, you can then start teaching and raise their awareness of the topic. In this way, you will be building their declarative knowledge. There's another way to conceptualize the idea of declarative knowledge, progress to procedural knowledge. So in this way, if you first engage, let's start from number 2. If you first engage students in activities to improve their procedural knowledge, what you're doing is actually you're engaging or you're encouraging student interaction. So procedural knowledge activities encourage student interactions. But as soon as you start involving students in building their declarative knowledge, you primarily involve them in learning. This learning could be from you through your teaching, or it could be from their peers. For example, when their peers provide some kind of corrective feedback or just feedback in general. In this way, you will be building their declarative knowledge. So you can alternate between these two and permutate them in different ways. You can start with declarative knowledge, then some activities that focus on procedural knowledge, then declarative, then procedural, and so on and so forth. In sum, the cycle of teaching should include both types of activities that engage students in developing their procedural knowledge and declarative knowledge, and in doing so, you want to make sure that students build linguistic accuracy, fluency, and complexity, and most importantly, some sort of pragmatic or social-linguistic level of understanding. So let me continue with this presentation in the next episode or next installment.